Hello, B here. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you because it is with somebody that is very, very, very special to me, my partner Ben. And it's been interesting because we tried to do this episode quite a few times. And we've had this happen at Aligned a few times where we've, had people on the podcast and it just hasn't happened, whether that's been a technical difficulty or it's been a bit clashy or it didn't record. This has happened quite a few times where we just didn't get the audio. And this happened with me and Ben. We tried to record it, did the whole thing, no audio. We tried to record it again, laggy. Tried to record it again, wasn't the energy for it. And then today we finally been able to do it. And it's quite funny because I just feel like this was exactly what needed to come through at the right time. And so, yeah, we dive into so many different aspects here. I basically tune in with Ben on, his perspective of masculine, feminine dynamics, our relationship in general, how we handle conflict, how we met, our story, how we are very, very different people, a little bit about our designs. Ben is a manifestor and I'm a manifesting generator. So how that has helped us understand each other. And yeah, we just dive deep into what has kept us so grounded in choosing each other almost 4 years later. So without further ado, I will let you dive in and hope you enjoy. Alrighty, so here we are. Third time's a charm.
Yep. Let's see if this one works.
So we've tried to record this content, this podcast, I think about 4 times now. We did it actually for you guys. We did it a whole time, and we didn't record the audio, which was my doing there with not turning down the microphone. And then we recorded it again in Australia, and the Wi-Fi was off. And so we're hoping today's the day. So if you're hearing this, today, in fact, was the day. So we'll dive straight in. We have quite a few little pieces to get to, but for those of you listening, this is my partner, Ben, love of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's accepted being on this podcast to share a little bit about our journey. So for human design context, Ben is a 6-2 manifestor, and I am a 1-3 manifesting generator, both emotional authority. Do you know anything about that? Yep. So we're going to be diving into just a little bit about us, our dynamics, and what has kept us grounded and rooted as being two very different people. And yeah. Okay. So first of all, I want to dive into how we met from your perspective.
My perspective, well, I think it's going to be the same from both of our perspectives in terms of the actual how.
I mean, like, where were you at as well? Where were you at in your life? I mean, the way in which we met too was a little bit out of the box. So tell us the story.
I was on a ship in the middle of the ocean, protecting ships from pirates, as you do. And I decided to download Tinder, set my location as Bali because that's where I was planning on going next due to all the COVID things. It was the only place letting people in. And came across you. And I swiped right. Didn't really think too much of it. And then you swiped right and we matched. I started talking. Deleted Tinder, I believe. Would have been, a week after? Something like that?
It was even shorter because I remember
maybe
being
shorter,
shocked.
Yeah. A lot shorter. I've always been that type of person. Speak to one person only, get to know them. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. In this case, it did work out. A couple of hiccups and challenges along the way where we stopped talking. And then, it ended up being 8 months from when we matched to when we actually met in person due to all the COVID trials and tribulations that didn't allow us to meet for one circumstance or another.
Yeah.
And then, we met, and I'd been single for 7 years prior to meeting you. So, I think that threw a couple of challenges in at the beginning of our relationship, kind of trying to adjust. Also, I only had a limited amount of time off, so we were trying to fit in as much as we could in the beginning, which ended up meaning we're in each other's pockets so much that it went from zero to hero. And yeah, that threw a couple of spanners in the works, but managed to work through it, and here we are.
Yeah, so this piece as well, like the 8 months, I always, when I'm looking back now as well, I'm always thinking like we needed that 8 months. We needed to not meet in that time. I think if we would have met, I don't think we would be here right now. I really don't. Like there was a few moments where when we stopped speaking, you know, we were clashing with our energy. We're both Taurus, you know, Ben's a manifester, I'm a manifesting generator. You know, for those of you that don't know much about the manifester, there's a very strong independent energy. And so I think you being single for 7 years as well, you know, you've got used to doing things your way, not really having to think about anybody else. And then somebody comes in who I am quite, you know, I know what I want and I know how I want it. And so it brought up a lot. And it also brought up a lot of my wounds. And I think looking back, like I hated the 8 months that we couldn't, you know, meet, but we needed that. And like you said, when we did meet, it was very, I always say, like, I don't think we had the usual honeymoon period that a lot of people who get to date and
No, we didn't have that.
yeah, we kind of went straight into when we met, we were pretty much in a relationship, you know, like Ben said, and that I'm really grateful for is that he is a traditional man in the sense of he's speaking to one woman and he'll pursue that connection until, you know, it either is or isn't. And I was in a stage of my life where I was quite used to my abandonment wounds were very activated. So I don't like to say I was attracting men who abandoned me because I don't think it was necessarily the fault of the men always. I think I was consistently attracting the same person and the same traits. And then that scenario would play out for me where I would ultimately become abandoned, right? And so when I met Ben and he was doing things like, you know, we'd spoke for a couple of days, he got my WhatsApp, and then you deleted Tinder. I remember going onto Tinder and looking and like he was gone. And I was like, oh my God, is he like decided to ghost me and just like block me? And then I go to WhatsApp, he's not blocked me and he's pursuing this dynamic. And I'm like, whoa, like you deleted it because you're pursuing me. And like, I remember being just kind of mind blown. And it's been this way with you for the past 3 years. Like you've continuously just almost repatterned the way that I see a dynamic and like showed me how to kind of trust that actually I'm not going to get abandoned in this instance. And yeah, so it was definitely, us meeting was definitely a whirlwind. It definitely wasn't one of those we met, we fell in love, and like everything's been perfect since. I mean, even before this podcast, I'm like, come on, it's time for the podcast. We're very different, and we've needed to bump up against things time and time again in order to just keep reassessing and re-choosing each other. So let's dive into a little bit about our communication and emotional growth. So conflict. How do we resolve conflict and grow through challenging times in the relationship?
I think we've got to a pretty good point now. I don't think we necessarily resolved conflict very well in the beginning. I think that reassurance of this is just an argument, this is just us butting heads and trying to resolve our differences and come to a middle ground, or deciding who's going to win in that particular circumstance, because sometimes it is just easier to let someone win and have their way versus kind of stomping your feet until you get your own way. Um, and that's what relationships really about. It's about giving and taking. You can't have it your own way all the time, and the other person can't have it their own way all the time. Sometimes you'll find a middle ground, but sometimes you've got to give and take a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think we've just managed to come to a pretty good balance of that. Feel like me a little bit better still at that. I feel like I've probably we've both made leaps and bounds in that, but I feel like
No, you have.
considering how reactive and how stubborn I was at the beginning of our relationship, I definitely think I've probably subconsciously, not consciously, always made a effort to personally develop within that realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that definitely, from my perspective, shows an improvement in how we handle conflict.
Yeah.
Because vast majority of the time, I just let you get your own way, and for the most part, it's letting you get your own way about something that's not even an issue at all.
Yeah.
It's in the grand scheme of things. And when it comes to big things, it's just about like, look, we choose each other, but we need to have this difficult conversation. Just because I'm criticizing you right now doesn't mean I don't want to be with you, but I have to identify that you have got this flaw or you are doing something that I don't agree with. And we need to find a way to navigate this together. That doesn't mean just because I brought up this issue and in your own head or my own head, we've created it into being this bigger thing. Doesn't mean we're going to leave each other because of it. It just means we need to have a conversation, a serious one, about how we're going to deal with this, how we move forward from it. And I think you're able to resolve conflict a lot better when you're able to provide that reassurance to someone that, look, yes, we are having a conflict right now, and yes, we are arguing, and yes, we might not get along for the next 10 minutes, next 2 hours, or the next 2 days, but ultimately, this doesn't mean I don't want to be with you. This just means something's wrong and we need to fix it.
Yeah.
How are we going to fix it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we just make a conscious effort to deal with our issues versus covering them up and burying them, which we did in the beginning.
Yeah.
We covered up and buried issues. And
I think on my part, that was a fear of you leaving me as well. Like, I think that's a massive pattern that I had until I met you, where I couldn't voice because I was so terrified that people would be like, well, peace out then,
Well, that's why I come to learn that through observing your behaviors and listening to your words when we do have arguments. And I got to a point where I started implementing that into our arguments. Like, this is an argument. I'm not leaving you. I still choose you, but we need to have the serious conversation.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to a point now where we can have an argument, and they never last very long.
No.
But we can have an argument, and we don't even need to do that anymore. I don't need to really.
No, you don't. I mean, I'm just laughing because of Monday night. We had a beautiful barbecue. I got Ben a barbecue for his anniversary present. And I had I threw a tantrum over, I wanted to record a little cute piece of content. Now, one thing about me and Ben is that I like creating. I do this for a job, as you guys know. Ben, you're not so inclined to be that bothered about the content. If anything, you don't really like being behind the camera. Now, what's actually interesting about his design is I'm observed in my design, which is there's an element of being designed to be seen. And so I like eyes on me. I'm also Leo rising. So like, I like the eyes on me. It's a kind of, this is about me. This is my life. Whereas you're an observer. And so there's a very opposite way in which we like to be perceived. And so I tried to record this video the other night and Ben pulls a face on the camera. And so I immediately get my back up and I'm like, oh, like you never create good content with me. And I will say now upon reflection, that I definitely blew it out the water and like threw a paddy, ran upstairs, was like, me. And then Ben just came over, and this is what he does do very, very well. Came over and just was like, listen, explain the scenario, and then was like, are we done? Like, are we really going to fall out? And look at that. Like, we've got this beautiful barbecue. We're really going to fall out over this. And in the end, a lot of our arguments end in laughter, don't they? They end in kind of joking about. And if anything, it brings us closer. And I think this is what a lot of people don't really quite understand about the contraction that comes with arguing. Like, there's been times where we've really sat down and been like, I don't really like you recently, or I'm feeling really detached from you recently. And for a lot of people, if you're not able to, one, check yourself and not take that fully personally and just see that as like, okay, we're in a bit of a conflict right now, a lot of people would walk away from that. Like, it's like, don't be with me then. And I mean, yeah, we've said that a few times, but we never take it seriously, because I think the one thing that you have done so well is getting me to the point where like you would have to really convince me that Ben is like ready to leave me at this point. I'd be like, you need to show me valid proof, because you have. It's like, I'm not leaving you right now, but we're going to have this uncomfortable conversation. And I think, relationships are mirrors, and wherever you're hiding or wherever you've got flaws, Ben's highlighted a few things in me that like I don't want to look at. I'm not okay with looking at, selfish elements of me or whatever it is that I'm like, oof, that really stings. But like, you're the closest thing to seeing me as my real self. And so for you to highlight that means like I've got work to do, and when you can actually sit down and listen to that person who says that to you instead of taking it as offense, you can actually grow through it. And I think that's what shaped us into being, we're better people for ourselves, but we're also better people for each other because we do listen. Like, I listen when you tell me certain things. It might take me a little while, but like over time, like we develop ourselves based upon these mirrors and these reflections. And yeah, like we're not a couple. I mean, I don't remember the last time we had like a nasty fight, like where we spit venom at we don't do that. We talk, and yeah, voices might get a bit heated, but we're never nasty, because I think we can just get to that point where like we can be brutally honest but communicate in a loving way almost. And I don't think that gets us to that point where like we fall out.
True. Excuse me.
Is that all you've got to say about that? Great.
Yeah.
For those just listening to the audio, he yawned at that response.
I'm not yawning at you. I yawn every time I have to sit still for too long. ADD.
Yeah, true. Okay, so after the conflict piece, do you think emotional expression is just as important for men as it is for women? And what does emotional expression look like for you?
I don't think so. It is important, or as important for men as it is women, because as men we repress a lot of our emotion by default. It's kind of, I don't know, you could call it genetic, you could call it something that's been bred into us through society and culture. But I do think it's the men are supposed to be stoic, and that person the family or people around him can rely on and look to for emotional comfort. So I feel like men expressing every little emotion that comes into their field isn't productive, because you can't create that stability for the people who rely on you around you. That doesn't mean that, you know, expressing emotion for men is a bad thing, but it just depends on the level, I think. If with you, I only really turn around and tell you the big things, the big things that bother me, and how I deal with those emotionally is very cutthroat. I wouldn't say that that's generic across all men. I am probably a little bit of an enigma in the sense where I've been through so much in my childhood and life and seen so many different horrific things and witnessed and been part of, all these different horrible things that I've kind of just, I don't want to say I've numbed, because I feel emotion just like everybody, but I've just kind of come to a point where I can realistically deal with my emotion without needing to express it.
Do you find that your outlet is more physical then, in terms of like releasing, any pent up kind of?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I think I don't release as much as I probably should do. I don't think my way of releasing should be the conventional way of like emotional crying, for example, which is just another way of releasing stored emotions. Mine doesn't really come out that way, although I will admit, if I'm watching something like a sad movie or something, and anything to do with dogs dying in a movie, or animals, then I'll shed the odd tear here and there. And when I do, I guess somewhat internally, I feel like there's this, I don't know, like a hard drive full of emotion that wants to come out, but I don't know where that emotion comes from. Maybe it's me boxing it all away, and all that emotion's just stored in one place within my mind or my body, whatever it is. And then the minute I feel something that triggers an emotion that allows me to do something like shed a tear or whatever, that's when it feels like there's this almost like dam that's a bit of water, that water being the emotions and the wall that I've created being the thing that's containing it. And I guess the tear is, the idea of like a crack forming. But then I'm able to patch that crack up before the whole dam. And I think men, they don't need to do that. Every man's different. I'm not going to turn around and sit here and say that that way of doing things is right for every man, but I come from a different era, a different upbringing. I was born in England, but I grew up in Africa. When I went over to Africa, the changes I saw at that age, men were the old school. They beat their children. Schools beat their children. Everything's very physical and hard. So weakness doesn't really get met with anything other than more punishment or a lack of sympathy. So you quickly develop into a point where you need to have this ability to not show emotion, this ability to deal with your emotions. And me being bullied in school pretty badly, like I needed to find a way, because nobody was going to save me. Nobody was going to get me out of my situation. So I needed at a very young age, before I could even comprehend what all of this sort of meant, needed to build these walls in order to maintain my mental sanity.
It's your protection mechanism,
yeah.
isn't it?
Maintain my mental sanity so that I didn't go off and, want to do something, to myself or anything like that, which luckily for me has never been a thought. But the essential, what I'm trying to say along the lines of the question you've asked is, I think it's not important for men to express every little emotion like a woman would. And I think that's the polarity between male and female. If a man wants to be a man that can look after his family and be that one that his woman can express all of her true emotions and lean on, a man needs to repress some elements of his emotion. But then also equally, the woman should be his safe space to be able to go and communicate those big things, those things that feel like are weighing him down, where his back's starting to arch and he feels like he's going to break under that weight. That's when he needs to be able to go to his woman and communicate that. Or, if he hasn't got a woman, someone else in his field, whether that be. It's hard to communicate with other men. Because men aren't going to give you sympathy, no matter, unless the man's like severely tapped in. And I don't know any men that are severely tapped in other than your friends. And they're not personally my friends, like, to confide something deep and dark or whatever. So like, I don't have people like that in my field. So yeah, I feel like any big things that come up, I speak to you about, but the vast majority of the time I just squash it. And I think for a man, it makes you more resilient to be able to do that. I don't necessarily think it's always right for every man.
No, I think
that's
just
the way I think about it.
You put that beautifully, because it's like, expression is healthy, and having that safe space, like you said, like there are times where like you've come to me, or maybe you've not even like initiated it that way, but I felt something from you, and then we've opened up. And I think that's the beauty of the woman-man dynamic, is that a lot of the time women feel intuitively what's going on. And I think there was a time at the beginning of our relationship where I really wanted, like, what I'd written down as like the man that I wanted. For example, my king list. A lot of features are who you are, but I was a little bit confused in what I thought that needed to look like. And so I was like, I want a man that'll sit and meditate with me. I want a man that'll be really spiritual. I want a man, X, Y, Z. And the thing is, like, I don't do those things. And so it was almost like I wanted a version of like me as well, that like I wasn't. And when I met Ben, I will admit, like, there was a lot of me trying to shape, like, feel more, come to this Kundalini activation with me, which, to be fair to you, you did. And, like, he did, and, like, he listens and he tries, but it's like, that's not who he is. And I read this post once where this woman was like, my man isn't spiritual in the sense that he's, visually spiritual. My man is the kind that goes out and chops wood and builds the fire for us in the garden and stands, like, listening to the wind at night, whatever. Like, my man is a man, and he's an anchor point, and he's a whatever, and, like, he's stoic and he doesn't cry, but instead he goes and beats a punch bag. And I read this post, and it flicked something in me. And I was like, oh my God, like, because one thing I do describe you as is that you're not the spiritual sense of, like, on paper, let's say, that a lot of people would say, oh, that's what deems a spiritual person, which I think is bullshit anyway, to be honest. But you are very much in integrity with what makes I would say, embodied man. And, like, your values and the way in which you present yourself and the way in which, our dynamic flows, which is I'm able to intuitively feel you. And I will call out those elements sometimes where then we end up in that dynamic where you are able to express, and then you come away from that feeling like, oh, like, she sees me now, she understands me better. And so I think you put that beautifully in terms of that.
Yeah. Just to add that spiritual man thing, it's like spirituals, we've created a definition of spiritual nowadays, which is basically what aligns with pop culture.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So in order to be spiritual, you have to be this person who's, wearing 1,000 beaded necklaces around your neck, and, you've got 10 shamans, and you go and do these 50-day bloody retreats where in total silence and all this sort of stuff. But spiritual can equally be that, like, for example, me, I believe in karma. So what you give out to the world, you get back.
Mm-hmm.
If you give positive vibes, you get positive vibes back. That is a form of spirituality. That is,
of course it is.
It's, a man being a man at his most raw, authentic roots. We go back to the caveman days. It's a form of spirituality to be centered as a man and what his principles are and what his tasks within the dynamic of society is. Yeah. Like, we've lost what a man's supposed to be in the dynamic of society. There's a reason for thousands of years that men have been going out hunter-gathering, women have been doing their thing at home and within their communities. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't mean one's better than the other. It's just each one's got a different set of purposes and contributions towards the union of two people. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a form of spirituality, being a man being able to tap into that, and a woman being able to tap into that as well. Yeah. Because it's going back to our most raw, authentic roots that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. If anything, I believe that's more spiritual than half this, pop culture, namby-pamby stuff that's been preached online just because it's cool to do. It's cool to have a video where you're doing this, that, or the other.
Well, it becomes a label you wear versus, like, an embodiment of actually, and you see this so much in Bali. It's like, I'm this. And then you meet them and you're like, but you're not. Like, that's not the embodiment of what you're saying that you are. You're not actually actioning the true energetics of that. And so, yeah, I love that. Let's have a little look. So actually, I think we actually just answered this next question, because the next question was, how do you guys connect spiritually? What does personal development look like for Ben? And I mean, like we've just said, personal development for you, it's,
Personal development is literally, for me, I don't have a passion right now that I can monetize, for example, or that I believe I can monetize.
I don't even believe that every passion needs to be monetized.
No. Sometimes I mean, if I could do anything in the world right now, it would be, and I had unlimited resources to do so, it would be, rescue all the animals in the world that I possibly could. I'd set up the animal rescue centers all over the world, charitable organizations, I'd spend all my money on that. Mm. But also realistically, like, my main path in life is I want to have a partner, I want to have children, and I want to be able to provide those foundations first before I can then go and do something else to help, the world or whatever like that. So in terms of personal development, for me, everything's just about, right, what is the way that I can apply my skill set, my knowledge, what I'm good at in a way that earns me the most money so that I can provide that future for my family. And then once that's established and they don't have to worry and I've got that as a fallback option always, then I'll start to take the risks of, right, what business can I do now so that I can actually break away from doing that, replace my income with a different income that is matched or higher, and that will allow me to have more time to spend with them. You know, like that to me is personal development. Now, we've clashed quite a few times because she said start your own business online, you know, create a personal brand and do all these things, but it's realistically like until I have a purpose within a business idea, there is no point in me creating a personal brand because I will have no identity behind that. Yeah. So as much as it frustrates you, me having to go and work away 2 weeks at a time and only have 1 week off and stuff like that, it's me doing the best I can with the skill set I have. And yeah, I think personal development looks different to me than what it does to you.
Of course.
But I think if you look at the core elements of what I'm doing, I think it does align with what you want long-term vision.
Yeah.
Just maybe not in the short term.
I think one of the greatest things, like I think one of my biggest lessons in life is patience. One of my personal like traits that are to be developed is patience, because I see it across the board. It's my business, it's my lifestyle, it's my partnership. You know, like I didn't want a long distance relationship. This is what we've had for the past 3 years, and we've closed the gap. But you know, some people do say to me sometimes, like, you know, I don't know how you do it, and I'm like, yeah, but the thing is, like, the vision that we're working towards, like, this isn't forever, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because it is that, you know, I can't expect everybody to just start a business like me, and like, because that's not. And it's funny because from a human design standpoint too, your life's work, your sun gate, is the gate of values. And so if it's not aligned with what you stand behind or your beliefs or like what you value in life, there's no passion in it, then you're not going to be able to do it. And so I have to remind myself of that with you, because this is where I love human design so much, because it does bring in these pieces where you can see someone and be like, oh, I understand why that might be the case for this person. And also your upbringing, you know, like, when did you start the military? 16?
16.
Military from 16. And then every single job since was a military-based job, really, wasn't it? Like security, or it was...
It had some direct form of, like, you know, relative relation to the military.
But, like, I mean, it's always been something in which you're following a set of, you know, like, there's
my comfort zone, my honest comfort zone is being in a workplace, unless I'm passionate about something, being led, because like I ultimately don't want to be responsible for something that I don't care about.
Yeah.
Like, but I've got personal pride where I'll turn up and do my job to the best of my ability in everything I do. But beyond that, like, if I don't care, if I don't buy into what I'm doing as a career, like, I can equally separate from that and detach and do what I need to do in order to earn money, still at the best of my ability, but I'm not going to care about it. And I don't want to, I don't know, I just don't want to progress further.
Yeah. So. No, and it's interesting too, because, you know,
don't want that responsibility of telling other people what to do in a round that I don't care about. Whereas if it's a realm I care about and that I'm knowledgeable in and I enjoy, then I can lead. Like,
it's funny, I just had a bit of a breakthrough with that, because the manifestor type, you're here to initiate and like delegate, and but there's got to be the ego willpower behind it to make the promise that you can like keep that promise and see something through. Yeah. And I think that is a value. And I mean, just for everyone listening, Ben knows absolutely nothing about human design and doesn't really have much of an interest in it. And again, at the beginning, I was like, why don't you have an interest in my, like, you should like it like I do. And he still listens to me when I say these things, but like, this is my passion, you know, it's not his, and I don't project that onto him, but I do leverage it in our relationship. And I explain myself sometimes through the lens of how I am versus he is. And this is one thing I just saw where like you know you don't have the ego and the willpower to make a promise towards like a business that you want to lead in, you know, and so it's like, well, until I do, I'll do this thing that's getting me what I want, you know, and so that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So to move into the purpose piece, like obviously you'd said like you don't really have like that clear passion and purpose, but then what you did say was that your main purpose right now is to build solid foundations for a family. And so
Yeah.
do you think like meeting your life partner and like a woman or me, for example, can activate a man's purpose in that sense? And I think this even goes back to like the cave times,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Because like that was a man's purpose.
yeah, I mean, in today's day and age where we're told that you have to be successful, otherwise you've failed at life, obviously people are a lot more ambitious nowadays. And I feel like people can kind of find their purpose a lot easier now that we have, I don't know, it's part of culture, I guess, to try and find your purpose earlier on than it is or was back in my day. I think me being the old school traditional person that I am, I feel like my entire purpose is activated by having a partner that I want to provide for. Uh, Whereas I don't necessarily think for newer generations of men that that is the same case. So yeah, for me, what's activated my purpose is you and the thought of having children and, you know, providing for a family and given the opportunities that I never had. Whereas I feel like a lot of the purpose that people have nowadays is more self-driven.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't care less if I have to work 120-hour weeks for the rest of my life in order to provide a certain lifestyle to you and our children. That's just the way I look at it. Is that that's my purpose as a man? Like I know you'd be absolutely pissed off with it, and you'd be like, "No, you aren't spending that much time away." But like for me, I I just do it without thinking about it. Like, would I be stressed? Would I be tired? Yes, but would I resent you? No, because that's what I choose to do in order to provide something. Like that at the very core is what I think the embodiment of a real man is. But on the flip side of that, like with all the technology and the availability of different career pathways and businesses and all entrepreneurship and all this sort of stuff nowadays, I think if you don't need to do that,
Of course not.
great. Like that's fantastic. But in answer to your question, I think yes, a man can be activated by his woman purpose wise, but I don't think it's the primary way that a lot of men are getting activated nowadays. I think a lot of men are getting activated by their own personal.
Yeah. Well, there's
This
a
is
lot
what
of
I want to achieve. This is what I want to have by this age, that age. This is what society tells me. So people are identifying their purpose. But what I do think is that purpose is not authentic. Because I think that purpose becomes, their why becomes all about money and material objects up until a certain point where they realize that that actually doesn't bring them any happiness. And that, or when they find a life partner and they, you know, men have mentally matured to that point where they're able to shift their perspective and look at things a different way, I think then they can be activated by a woman as being their primary purpose. But I think that's something that comes with age.
For sure. And I mean, I read this thing somewhere and I think it kind of, I think it's true in the sense where, I can't remember what did it say? It was like, there's two different types of men. There's the man that'll build his empire and then decide to pursue a woman. So he needs to have that like empire built and then he'll open himself up to the dynamic of a relationship. Or there's the man whose empire is activated by the woman. And I think you're the latter, you know, it's like, I've seen that happen where when I met Ben, and like the evolution, you know, we've been together 3 years officially, we've known each other almost 4. I've seen that where like I saw the moment that you decided that I was your life partner and that you were really pursuing this, and the moment you like chose me. And we had to break up for that to happen. You know, it wasn't just I choose you. Like you actually didn't choose me. And then we broke up for 10 days, and then he did. And from that moment forward, it's always been about like, what can we curate? And yeah, and so I think it depends. It depends on where that man is at. And like you said, there are resources now and there are opportunities now where a man doesn't have to struggle as much, but can still get those things that he needs.
Yeah.
But there's also like a deep conditioning of, that's why I think a lot of men do come back to that, where they've kind of been in the material and then they're like, actually, no, I'm going to settle down now and choose a woman.
Yeah. I think also as well, like you were saying, that there's some men who have that innate drive to succeed before they find a relationship, or it's just already inbuilt in them. And then for some men, it needs to be activated by having something of a purpose in their life, like providing for a family. I think this is where like dating gets hard for women nowadays, because they're going into the thing looking for this already finished polished product of a man who's already driven, who's already succeeded, who's already achieved all these different things. Whereas, like, you could equally be that man's purpose. You could go into that relationship, and actually, that could be the shifting point. Now, I get not every woman, depending on where she is at her own journey, wants to be part of building a project with a man, like as in the man being the project, especially successful or high performing women. But on the flip side, like, I feel like a lot of relationships are not getting a go nowadays, or women are not giving a lot of men a go because they're too early on in that journey, or what they don't realize is they could actually become the activation for that man wanting to then strive to achieve. Because for me, before I met you, I would have been still working in that security gig, working on the ships, because I earn bloody good money. I got to travel the world in between, and I live life on my terms, and I don't need much. Like, I'm not a flashy person. Like, sure, I've gone and done some flashy things with my money, but like, overall, I can quite happily live in a shack on a beach, for a couple of weeks, and then go back to work for 6 months and do that for the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
I've grown up with nothing, lived with nothing for a lot of years, and I guess that's almost my set point. That's my comfort zone. So, like, if I hadn't met you, I probably wouldn't have, and our relationship hadn't developed to the point it's at now, I probably wouldn't have had the ambitions of like owning a company where I'm providing generational wealth for my children. I probably just would have been like, well, if I have children, they get what they give.
Yeah.
Whereas you being high performing, you achieving quite a lot, you having ambition, has identified and pulled out that piece in me and given me a sense of drive and purpose. It's not me competing with you on who can do better, but it's me wanting to do better for you, because I know that your ambitions are up here.
Well, I hold a certain standard for myself, and it's like, well, I wouldn't falter on that standard. And so it's not like I'm saying, well, you either hold that too or go. But I think this is why surrounding yourself with the right people too is important, because you've activated a standard for your life now where you're like, oh, actually, no, like, this makes sense.
And that's not because you're telling me you want X, Y, Z, or you have to have this lifestyle. Like, it's more just like, I've now found someone in my life who I want to think about more than what I want. And then when I have children with you, it will be like, right, now I've got, a child who I want to provide a better standard of living than I had. Like, I want them to become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, not a millionaire lifestyle, but like a lifestyle where yes can be said to the vast majority of things they want to try and do, experience. And I just think a lot of the time men haven't had that purpose activated in them until they meet someone worth activating it for. Doesn't mean it's not there.
For sure. So then in terms of the kind of masculine feminine dynamics piece, would you say there's a good balance between us with the masculine and feminine?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've got a pretty good at what I love and like laugh about to myself sometimes is that I can be really hyper independent. And so when Ben's away 2 weeks at a time and he comes back for a week, And when Ben's away, I'm like doing everything, you know, like sorting it all out. Because I really can. But then as soon as he's home, I'm like, the laundry, the this, the da 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 da. And like, I just love it. Like, it's not just because like I can't do it, but I love having that ability to just soften. And that's something you've definitely allowed me to do, just kind of soften more into being taken care of. And I mean, even there's still times where Ben's like, you want to be taken care of, like, so sit down, like, stop, you know, like there's times where I'll order at the restaurant and he's like, that's my job, stop, you know. But I think we've definitely, like you said, like I've activated that masculine piece and the provider role in you, but you've
I
definitely
already had it, but
yeah, you did. You've got
obviously
that by
through
default.
communication of us talking of how we like the masculine and feminine to show up within our relationship, we've been able to understand how we better apply that to our relationship from both sides.
So then, what do you think happens when the woman tries to drive the ship versus like when she softens?
You emasculate a man, you don't allow him to lead. So in essence, you don't get what you want from a man.
Mm.
You know, if you, and I guess that's hard for like high performing independent women who've literally been looking after themselves. You know, maybe they've been single 3 years and they've been taking care of all the bills, they've been taking care of all everything. And now you've got to relinquish this control, this responsibility to someone else and hope that they're gonna, you know, match the level that you've set for yourself.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like if you don't give the man the opportunity to, you will not be able to slot into your feminine role.
For sure.
So ultimately, if you want that polarity and that dynamic of, you know, a hyper masculine man and a hyper feminine woman, or even just normal feminine, you know, masculine dynamic, you've got to focus and put the work in on implementing that. So whether that's a man stepping up more and taking control and leading his woman, and whether that's a woman stepping back and allowing herself not to take control of every situation. Yeah, it doesn't mean like a woman now needs to just turn around and say, right, you pay for everything.
Sure.
Whatever. It just means like the masculine female dynamic is not necessarily about who's paying for what. It's more about how that woman can feel around her man. Mm-hmm. Does she feel feminine or does she feel like she's the one in control? Yeah. Because if she feels like she's the one in control, then for sure she's probably holding more of the masculine dynamic within the relationship. Yeah. I just think it's intentional.
Yeah, and I mean, like it does take time because even I've like there's things like I remember communicating to Ben. I'll use the example of flowers. Like I remember communicating to Ben a while ago. Like I really like receiving flowers, and what's quite interesting is for the longest time I used to pretend that I didn't like flowers because I wouldn't get now. But I wouldn't get them, and so I basically set up that I didn't like flowers because I didn't want to be disappointed by the fact I wasn't getting them from anybody. Nobody was doing that for me. And I remember the moment where I was like, I actually really I love receiving flowers, and I would love to receive flowers regularly from you. And I had to communicate that, and it seemed a little bit like masculine to communicate that. But then also what I've learned is that like telling a man what you need and want, but then not, nagging them for it. And I mean, I'm definitely guilty of like in a roundabout way planting that seed of like, oh, I've not had flowers in a while, or no, no, no. And like that doesn't make a man want to give you the flowers. It doesn't make a man want to do it. Otherwise it just becomes obligation. And I think the hardest part, I know for me personally, has been sitting in, and I think it's a control part on my end because I've definitely got control patterns, but like sitting back and like waiting. And so like things like anniversaries, for example, you don't want to be having to remind your man about anniversaries, but I know that I've reminded you in the past out of anxiety that you'll forget, and then I'll be like let down. So it's almost like a self-protection mechanism, but then also you're then not surprised and nothing special is done, because you've
not given the man the benefit of the doubt, and also we'll use the flowers as an example. You turn around and mention the flowers, and what my mindset is right, you've mentioned the flowers. I know you want flowers.
Every day of every year.
Exactly. and you want them like the most unrealistic. Well, it's not unrealistic, but you want it in a frequency where I know that they will no longer become as valuable as they are when you receive them less frequently. Now, less frequently doesn't mean anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas. You know, that means like once a month. If you get flowers once a month, you are getting flowers more than 99% of the women out there, because I guarantee you, vast majority of men in long-term relationships, you know, after the honeymoon phase has ended, they're buying their woman flowers like on birthdays and anniversaries, and not even Christmas.
You don't know the percentage. You know.
I would hazard a guess. I will Google this afterwards. I will hazard a guess. It's probably
Where are
around.
you getting the stats from, mate?
Because I'm speaking to all the men I work with, and not one of
Fair
them,
enough, yeah.
not one of them has bought flowers in the last couple of years for their partners, and all of them have been in long-term relationships. But what I'm saying is, you know, you ask for these things, you turn around and remind me it's our anniversary. I'm like, dude, I know when our anniversary is. I'm like a very dates, timings
I
oriented.
think it's my
person.
fear of like that. Oh my god,
Like
I forgot.
yeah, but you are warranted to feel that way if you get to the day after
and it's
and nothing's happened. Then fair enough, but you've got to relinquish that control and give
Absolutely.
the benefit of the doubt to that person. Otherwise, yeah, like if your partner forgets your anniversary and it's the day after, go and give them a clip around the ear. They bloody deserve it, you know. But like at the same time, like how are you supposed to allow me to surprise you?
Absolutely.
If you turn around and go, you know, I want flowers, and then, you know, 4 days later you start another argument as to I haven't got flowers. It's like, well, because it's still on your mind, so it's now not going to be a surprise. So now when I send these flowers to you, you'll get them, you'll be happy, but you wouldn't be as happy as if flowers just showed up on the door and you were just like, oh my god, like, and you hadn't been thinking about it within a close proximity of time to that event. So it's like an anniversary. Like if I didn't say anything, if you didn't say anything, and it got to your anniversary day and I'd not mentioned anything, and then all of a sudden I said, pack your bags, are off. You'd just be like, ah.
Well, you did that the other day. You were like, okay, what have we got on for Friday? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, well, now we do. Dress up nice, we're going to have dinner. And I love that so much. But like, that's one of the times where like I hadn't said anything. I just relinquished the control, and then it happens. And so this is the piece, like, as for any women that, you know, maybe you're resonant with this piece where we nag, you know, it's what we do. We got multiple tabs open, we can do it. But really trusting and leaning back that like, once you've said what you need, like let the person know what you need, but like also trust that they'll do it. And if they don't, like this is where you've got to observe, okay, like actually is this person for me? Because they're not listening. You know, like it's man's job to listen, but ultimately as women, we've also got to let them do that instead of trying to micromanage.
Although I'm questioning my choice of restaurant based on today's weather.
Oh yeah, it looks like it's raining outside. Okay, so to wrap this up, because I feel like we could go forever, but what's the main thing that has helped us stay grounded and keep choosing each other almost 4 years in, would you say?
Communication.
Yeah.
It's just...
I think honestly just choosing each other.
Yeah, I mean, choosing each other... I mean, I chose you ages ago. Like, that's not a conscious decision I need to make every day or every time we argue anymore. Like, my thought process doesn't go to, she's doing my head in, she's done this again, right? That's it. I'm thinking of breaking up with her, or I can't deal with this any longer. Mine just goes to, fuck's sake, she's done this again. Is she ever going to listen to me? Bloody infuriating, this woman, but I still love her. And then I'll communicate that you've pissed me off, whether that's, you know, just as calmly as I'm speaking to you right now, or whether that's me. We don't really shout at each other, but sternly talking to you and going, you're pissing me off now, mate.
Once he gets his stern voice on, like I know, I'm like, okay, you know.
But like, I don't think it's a conscious choice anymore. No, I just think it's a subconscious choice, and I think that's a really valuable place to have got to, because a lot of people, it has to be a conscious choice. And I think if there's a conscious choice to have to keep picking someone over and over again, there is still issues big enough in your relationship that
To have to go there.
to have to go there. Yeah. Whereas for me, it's just not even a thought process anymore. It's just like, you're going to piss me off sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not going to agree. But ultimately, this is my life partner. So
Yeah.
get on with it, sunshine. Deal with it.
No, I completely agree. It's exactly the same. It's just like there's just no potential there of like us not working things out. And I think that when you lead in from that perspective of this is what I've chosen and I want this person to be my life partner, you're not going into you're not going into conflict with the this is make or break. It's just we're gonna make this up. Like we're gonna make up no matter what. And it's definitely proven to be successful for us. Our arguments are just usually two stubborn Tauruses butting heads, and then 5 minutes later we're done. Okay,
most of the time I'm stopping it from even getting.
You do. You diffuse
well.
Very well. You really, really do. And it's funny because the tables really have turned. It's almost like I've become a little bit more reactive, and you've become the most chill, non-reactive person ever. But like that's beautiful. It's we wear off on each other. I mean.
I think it's great. It doesn't mean you have to change in any way and get less reactive. I think you just need one person within the relationship who can stop it from getting.
I think I'm just I can be emotional, and so you diffuse my emotions well. Okay, so if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self about relationships, what would it be?
I'd probably say don't lie to yourself and don't kid yourself. So in essence, I feel like a lot of what we do when we're younger is get into relationships promising the world to the other person, which I think causes emotional trauma to that person over time, especially from men to women, in order to get what they want or in order to maintain a situation that suits them. I was in relationships where I knew I wasn't going to marry this person. I knew I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life with, but it suited my situation at the time where, like, I didn't want to be alone. And I did enjoy hanging out with that person and their company and the intimacy side of things. But, like, beyond that, I had no investment. But, like, you would, when they told you they loved you and you said, you would say the same back, or you never actually truly meant it. So I'd say I'd just be saying to my younger self, be honest with yourself, be straightforward with people, and just don't kid yourself. Yeah, just, I don't know. We're all very absorbent to trauma throughout life, and relationships are one of the biggest ones that cause a lot of trauma for us. Whether that's what somebody said, what somebody did, how they treated us, and yeah, I don't know. I just think I'll probably tell my younger self to under promise, over deliver.
Under promise, over. I don't. Yeah, is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, under promise, over deliver.
Oh right, yeah. Okay, my brain got a little bit confused then. I thought you were saying it like. Yeah, I don't know. Never mind. Moving on. I think I'm the same because I remember what I wrote here in the notes. Is like what I wrote as my answer was the relationship you build up, the relationship you dream of is built with the person. I think that because like I definitely was one of those people that was looking for my end goal, and after meeting you, it's definitely been we're building our end goal together, and it's actually really nice to be able to look at like your future together and be like, I can look at where me and Ben are at, and I'm like, in 5 years or in 10 years or when we've got a family, like I get so excited about the fact that at some point we're going to have little children that are like half you and half me running around, and like that's going to be a whole new chapter, and we get to build these chapters together versus I need you to have all your shit figured out and I need to have my shit figured out, then we need to come together and we'll be like perfectly figured out, which like is definitely not the case. When you're in a relationship, there's going to be things that you need to look at, and I think similar to what you said about the being honest with yourself, like read the room is what I wrote, because I used to make a lot of excuses for people's behavior. Even though I knew that wasn't my person, I knew, and I think it was the opposite for me. Like they would be saying like love you back to me, and I'd be like, oh, they do, look, like they really, and I would know deep down that like this person had absolutely no intention, but I would pursue it because like I didn't want to start again. I didn't want to, look at myself and go, oh my God, I'm not like enough for this person kind of thing, or this person's just not right for me. And it put me through a lot of pain. And if I would have just been read the room, I would have known from the get-go that that was not my person, but you have to go through these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, like finalizing, what surprised you most about being in a relationship like ours? And am I the kind of woman you expected to end up with?
What surprised me? I mean, I'll answer the second one first in reverse order. So, are you the type of woman I expected to be with? Hell no. In the most nicest possible way, no, definitely not. And what was the first question again?
What surprised you most?
What surprised me most? By the time I'd been single 7 years, me getting into a relationship with someone who was as emotionally in touch, I felt I was surprised about like the fact that I was able to handle that and stick around for the long run, because me being so emotionally closed off, especially at the beginning of our relationship, I didn't think I had the capacity to be with someone like that, who was the complete polar opposite to me. Yeah.
Our dog is barking downstairs, which means that I think we have someone at the door. So we'll wrap this up. I feel like we're right on time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been amazing having you on, baby. Thank you for sharing everything and reflecting. And yeah, if you've got any questions for us, please don't hesitate to either message me at Be Embodied, or you can send us a message at Aligned, and who knows, maybe we'll be back for another ep down the line.